Would any perfectionists in the room verbally raise your hand?
That's me.
Daria's a perfectionist.
I am not.
You're not a perfectionist?
Mm-mm. No.
I kind of thought you were going to raise your hand. Like, what makes you say, no, I am not a perfectionist? You don't care if you mess up?
Well, it depends on what it is. I don't care if I mess up, but also I just don't. I don't know how to explain it. I just am not.
Okay. Ron?
I think I'd be classified as a frustrated perfectionist.
What does that mean?
I like this already.
Where your goal is perfection, and somewhere along the way you realize it's never going to be there.
Oh.
So just abandon hope, all ye who enter here.
You know, I really resonate with that, actually. I suffered from that pretty intensely, but the older I've gotten, I'm just like, you fall short long enough and you just kind of go, wah, wah. It's like, okay, I guess I'm just not that good. But it is a struggle for you in some ways.
Yeah, I will say I'm somewhat of a reformed perfectionist because
Listen to us. Creating terms. Is this a theological thing? Or?
No, just I still have like really high standards that like sometimes it's I will spend way too long on a project, but I've gotten to the point where I have to accept good enough as good enough and just finish it. But sometimes my perfectionism gets in the way of me even starting a project. Like if I can't do it perfect, I don't even want to try.
Yeah.
Sarah's a lot like that. Sarah doesn't like doing things that she's not good at. And it's not that it's not a pride is the cause of that by any means. So what do you attribute the cause of your perfectionism to be, Daria? Have you thought through that much?
No, I've always been a high achiever, and I want things that I put out into the world to be really good and something that I can be really proud of. I don't care if anyone else is proud of it, but I need to be proud of it.
Okay, so you've got some intrinsic deal. Where, see, for me, it was I wanted people close to me to be able to go, wow, Brian, you did it. Like, and you don't care about that.
Yeah, no, that means very little to me. I need to know I did a good job.
Okay. And you said high achiever. My kids have tried to teach me this, and perhaps you can clarify it. My kids called me a try-hard. What makes you a high achiever and not a try-hard?
I mean, I would probably need your kids to explain exactly what they mean by try hard. You could probably use them interchangeably, would be my guess.
Yeah. Oh, you got good grades? You're a try-hard.
I think it's a nicer way to say it is a high achiever. It sounds better.
Yeah, like, I mean, I ended up getting really good grades. I had to work super hard for them. But in hindsight, I'm kind of like, why did I do that?
Oh, yeah, no. People that I graduated college with who we have the exact same degree, they slacked off. They got way worse grades than I did. I graduated like, I'm not going to say it, somewhere top of my class. But we have the same degree. And some of them are actually doing better than I am.
Right, because when you're in high school, everyone tells you, this will affect you for the rest of your life. And then after you get like your first job, no one ever asks you again about high school.
Yeah, or college.
It doesn't matter how well or how not well you did at all. Ron, what brought about your perfectionism, do you think? Do you have a cause of that?
I can't think of any reason why. It just, you strive for that. I can't think of a psychological trauma or anything that was like, you're not good enough. It was just inside of me that I wanted to, if you're going to try, you try for your best.
Well, and see, for me growing up, one of my frustrations is my brother achieved very highly without virtually any effort whatsoever. And that created in me this like try hard thing to like kind of keep up, But anyway, there's an article from Psychology Today that talks about one of the common causes of perfectionism, because many of us know someone or are perfectionists. And here's the scenario they talk about a guy named Omar. So in adulthood, Omar was known as a workaholic among his friends and coworkers. And his wife jokes that I never have to pick up his socks because he's never home anyway. Ouch, that's actually pretty brutal. His work had become his identity, and the accolades that came from that were the sustenance that sustained him. He did not know how to feel okay with himself unless he was achieving, and achieving perfectly. Any mistake was met with ridicule and self-loathing. This was unrealistic for anyone, but to someone who grew up without the message that they are worthy just because they're themselves, it's a common result. Despite so many professional and personal achievements, Omar always felt incomplete and defective. He thought, I'll feel okay for a little bit after finishing a project or getting an award, but then I'm back to just feeling like it's hard to explain that I'm not good enough. Perfectionists often have, by the way, a very deep sense of self-loathing. Their inner dialogue is harsh to themselves. I don't want to ask, you can comment on this, perfectionists, if you want to. For me, it's very true. I am my worst critic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a hard thing for me to grapple with and deal with. But now here's what's interesting. They paint the picture of Omar's childhood as the source of his adulthood perfectionism. And here's how they explain his childhood. Omar grew up one of 10 siblings in a crowded Milwaukee apartment complex. He remembers having to fight, sometimes literally, for attention from his parents, both of whom were often stressed and overwhelmed. He learned quickly to minimize emotional struggles or needs, as these seemed to annoy his parents. Instead, good grades, making varsity letters at school, and being the first in his family to master English earned him the praise that his developing soul craved. And psychology today would call that childhood trauma. But now this is where I think I misunderstood for many years the word trauma. People think big T trauma, like you fought in Afghanistan.
Right.
You were, rescued from a burning building. Those are traumas. But anytime, I've heard one definition be anytime that your needs aren't fully met in some way, it can be a small T trauma.
Oh, so basically we all have experienced trauma for the greater portion of our life.
Yeah, at some level.
Yeah.
Like, if let's just say you witnessed something pretty scary as a kid. Maybe there was a bus crash or a car accident, and you go to your parents kind of sad and like, oh, it was so scary. And your parents go, it's fine. Everybody's okay. Don't worry about it. Get out of here. It's a quick moment as a parent, but for a kid, now suddenly you've got something in your head that can affect you for the rest of your life. Now, I know it sounds dramatic, but that's basic psychology that I think, generally speaking, can be true. It's the small things in life we remember that haunt us, right? The bully's comment in the hallway in middle school can replay in your head for the rest of your life.
Especially with young children.
Yes.
Because they don't have proper perspective on the world, that them not getting a couple things that they needed, especially if we're talking about emotional connection, that's massive and will really hurt them.
Yeah, and in this case, I like this scenario of Omar because his parents were doing the best they could. They don't paint a picture of an abusive father that's, Joe Jackson, go get a switch. Come back in here and learn how to dance, Michael, or, whatever Joe Jackson was doing. They had 10 kids. They were stressed and overwhelmed. I got 5, and I can feel that one. Like, I can guarantee you I've had days where my kids have come to me with some sort of emotional need, and I've looked annoyed because I've just totally had it for the day, right? I get it. They didn't do anything on purpose to hurt the guy, but this caused in him, like, he wanted the love and affection of his parents, so he found a way to do it, and it was achievement. And so subconsciously now, how does he feel good about himself? In his mind, it becomes achievement. And as an adult, he's become a perfectionist. I mean, I think it's, even for folks who are skeptical of modern psychology, I think that is very logical, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Now, Lauren, your sister's a counselor. You're listening intently. I mean, are you with me on this? It seems very natural and logical. Mm-hmm. But I think the hard thing for those of us who didn't grow up in a culture, because, when I grew up and when Ron grew up, it's just people who need some serious issues. They have serious issues, go to counseling and such. Mm-hmm. And so when someone like me, who didn't experience big T trauma, like you go, it's really hard to start hearing these things. Childhood trauma. What are you trying to say? What are you making fun of my mom? I mean, no one's making fun of your mother. But you have to understand every parent has some flaws. And so you have to be able to honestly examine your childhood to go, why am I like this? My parents did their best, but there are reasons why I'm behaving this way that can be worked on. Mm-hmm. It's not just who I am, right? And what's super interesting about this is Christianity Today also recently, this was from Psychology Today did this, Christianity Today did an article where a woman talked about a specific kind of perfectionism, Christian perfectionism. Mm. And I thought that was pretty interesting to think through. Her perfectionism plays itself out deeply in her spiritual life. Before the break, we were chatting about perfectionism, which, quite frankly, I've struggled with dramatically over the years. A lot of it being self-imposed. But I think as Psychology Today pointed out, it can just come from aspects of your childhood that are not a direct result of your parents doing something wrong per se, but of a smaller trauma in your childhood. It's like maybe it's how you got the attention of your parents. Maybe you were praised when you achieved and only when you achieved, not for character qualities or things like that. As a parent, it's very hard to praise your child for like an intangible character quality versus you won the game, you got the award, you got an A. And that kind of thing, which is a normal thing for parents to do, can create in a child the sense of, oh, I have value when I achieve. Okay, now Christ says you have value in who you are as created in the image of God. But that's a different story for another day here. Christianity Today did an article about a woman who has Christian perfectionism. Psychology Today wrote about it, Christianity Today, so we thought we'd discuss it. She says this in the article. When I finally came to the life-changing realization that I was a perfectionist, I told a close friend. She laughed.
Aww.
But it's close friend, so it was okay. It was already obvious to her then, and in hindsight, it's obvious to me now. You ever done that where you're like, hey, I think I'm, and everyone kind of giggles? You're like, duh. You guys did that. You guys do that to me on a fairly regular basis. I'm a little aloof.
Yes.
And so the laughing does not hurt people's feelings in these situations. So she said, still, by the time I recognized it, perfectionism had already marked my walk with God for decades. Psychologists who study perfectionism define it as a personality disposition characterized by extremely high standards and overly critical self-evaluations. These two characteristics are known as perfectionistic striving, perfectionistic concerns. Most perfectionists don't experience this in all areas of their life. Like, I am not a perfectionist when it comes to the cleanliness of my desk or my bedroom. But there's certain aspects of my life that would be that case. Is that for you, Daria?
Yeah.
Ron?
Yeah, that helps make more sense of it. Because if you were a perfectionist in everything, it would be make you so weary. You'd be
exhausting.
Striving everywhere, yeah.
But some people are perfectionists in everything.
And
God bless them.
Yeah, and in fact, pray for them because their existence is pretty difficult. It might look like they have it all together, but again, often what's paired with perfectionism is very critical self-evaluation. Like if you got inside their head and listened to their self-talk, you would gasp at how much they are hard on themselves in really unfair ways. And I'm raising my hand saying, I know because I've done this. It says here, rather perfectionism is focused on select domains in life, such as sports, work, perfectionists, academics, maybe relationships, physical appearance could be a perfectionism thing. And for her spirituality, her Christian faith. I was like, huh. Ron, you're nodding. You can see this?
I could see that, where that's such a personal area and something so meaningful that I could see how a perfectionist might grab onto that and be like, okay, Jesus paid it all to him I owe. So I am going to read the Bible in a year or less. I'm going to, pray on my knees for vast amounts of time. I'm going to, and set up all these disciplines that are great, but in measure. And because you're a perfectionist, well, you'll read about what D.L. Moody did and you'll incorporate that, and then C.H. Spurgeon, and you'll be like, okay, I could do that too. And pretty soon you're consumed by your religious disciplines and maybe putting more effort into the discipline than actually the relationship with Jesus.
Yeah, and see, to the non-perfectionist, what you just described will look like someone, you just go up to them and go, hello, what do you believe in, works righteousness? Your works don't save you, Jesus does, get over it. But this person doesn't believe, that the Christian perfectionist is not sitting around going, I have to earn my salvation.
No.
I mean, they know the theology.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the subtlety of this article is pretty important and might resonate with a lot of people. So she'll say to herself, she goes, well, I know it's not fair to expect, say, 19-year-old me to have acted as I would now. When I look back, my predominant feeling is often regret. I should have cared more, known better, been different. She said, perfectionism keeps me second-guessing my choices. It brushes against the desires I have to do good, and what was once a joyful, exciting opportunity to love others becomes beset with self-doubt and questioning. Am I doing this for the right reasons? Like, am I volunteering here because it's about me or is it about God? I want it to be about God. Is it really God's will? What if I'm doing more harm when I'm serving? Now, I know it sounds like a try-hard problem to non-perfectionists. Oh, you're worried about being perfect. No, this person wants to please the Lord. And they're really hard on themselves that they're not living their Christian life in a way that's perfect. Because they want to please God, not trying to earn their salvation. She said, years ago, I stumbled on an editorial by theologian D.A. Carson that shed much needed light on the heart of my own perfectionism. In Perfectionisms, published by Theolanus, Carson describes genuine Christ-centered believers who understand and love the gospel, yet still struggle with despair over their sin. Up until then, I'd largely heard Christians address perfectionism in terms of pride or unbelief in the gospel. But Carson writes of a species of perfectionism that isn't a matter of ego or doctrine. Rather, those who struggle with this type of perfectionism are so uncomfortable with their wrestlings over sin because they know they ought to be better. They know God's standard and see how short they fall and abuse themselves for it. You're nodding a little bit here, Daria. Go as far into that as you want.
Yeah, I have definitely been there before. And I know other people that also fit that description. And it's a really hard place to be, and they need your prayers.
Truly. Yeah. And I needed someone to look at me in the midst of, I was sharing with a mentor. I brought the story up before, so I won't tell the whole thing, but I was talking to a friend about a failure as a dad that I perceived as a major failure. And it was causing me deep regret and anxiety and stress. And this person looked at me and goes, oh, I'm so sorry that you're feeling that way. Do you know how theologically wrong all of your thinking is? It was startling to me. But this is where the person who loves Jesus is not applying the gospel to their own lives. They could preach the gospel perfectly to somebody else, but they're telling themselves theological lies. And Lauren, being that you're not a perfectionist, what would Jesus say, do you think, to the person who is beating themselves up? Like, I did something good, but it wasn't good enough. I could have loved that person more. I could have given more.
Well, that's why Jesus went to the cross. He already did the work. He already took the beating for you. You don't have to take that beating for yourself. He already did that on your behalf. And that's why he did that, because he doesn't want you to abuse yourself into thinking that you can do it yourself.
Amen. Yeah, and see, I thought for many years, talking to myself like that I was coaching myself into better spirituality. But what I was doing was sinning. That kind of negative self-talk, like beating yourself up, that's sinful, right?
Yeah, the fruit of the Spirit doesn't apply just to other people outside of you. It also applies to you, to be kind and gentle and patient with yourself. And also, you are a person made in the image of God. And to talk so poorly about someone made in the image of God, if you have to look at it that way, if you have to take yourself out of your body and realize that you're talking to yourself as a person made in the image of God in that way, yeah, it's unkind.
And I like that phrase, because whenever I share something with my mentor where I'm doing this negative self-talk, she'll look at me as I walk away and she'll go, by the way, be kind to yourself, because she knows what I'm about to do. It started to get in a war with myself. Yeah, spiral into self-loathing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that person definitely seek help. We have some wonderful Christian counselors that we know in our community. Sometimes you just need a little bit of help to see yourself as God sees you.
Yeah, his yoke is easy, his burden is light. He loves you. And what I've had to coach myself with, when you get into a negative cycle, you have to say, and for that, Christ died. Like, okay, yeah, I did fall short. I could have spent more time with my neighbor, or I could have given more money, or I could have done this or that. And for that, Christ died. I'm not perfect. He is. I don't need to be perfect. He is. And like you were saying before, you almost have to coach yourself too. How would I feel as a follower of Christ if I talked the way I talk to myself to someone else?
Right.
If I looked at Lauren and started saying all the things I say to myself, I'd be horrified, which should be clear evidence of your spiritual dysfunction and how bad your spiritual perfection is. And I agree with you, Daria. I think many people caught in Christian perfectionism, you can't get out on your own.
Oh, no. You need a mentor. You need a friend. You need like a professional help, pastor, counselor, someone.
And see, the challenging part is this person is afraid of getting help because they'll think they sound self-righteous.
I think there's nothing more humbling and fulfilling than committing to working on yourself.
That's right. And I guarantee you, if you go to a trained counselor or a pastor, they're not going to shame you for this. They're going to help you see Christ as you look at yourself.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss anything. See you next time.